What's going on, you guys? Welcome back to MGB Customs. We are here with a new video. This is a video that you guys have been requesting. It's a beginner tutorial on tools, but we're putting our own spin on it. We're actually gonna review an Amazon tool set that any of you can get right now, Amazon Prime, see it in a couple days. And I'm gonna basically give each tool a grade, not like A, B, or C, or 1 out of 10. Basically like, will it work, passable, or complete trash? I think you're gonna be surprised with the results, so let's get right into it. All right, so the purpose of buying this set was to try and get you guys everything you need in one package. Granted, it still didn't come with absolutely everything you need to get started, so I'm gonna go over those caveats right now. So one thing that you're not gonna get in the set, believe it or not, is just a knife, okay? But I figure if you're into leather craft, you're kind of crafty at least a little bit, so chances are you've got one of these at home, just a basic mat knife or an X-Acto knife. Either one of those work amazing for leather craft. And then the other thing that you're not gonna have is just a couple of materials. Materials and tools are not the same thing. Materials are consumable, essentially. So glue, burnishing agent, which you don't actually have to have for any project, and then leather. So obviously I have leather here. You'll have to source some leather. I'll put some links down in the description of where I love to get my leather. You can get it really cheap and you can get it in small quantities. I'll help you guys out with that. But let's dive right into the actual set. This is basically everything you get. I'm not gonna go through each thing individually right now because that would just be redundant. I'm gonna go through the tools as I make this little flap wallet. There's a link in the description for the flap wallet if you guys want the PDF. There's nothing fancy about this. I wanted to make a little button flap because it actually comes with buttons. I wanted to incorporate that in the design. And there's other things in here that I don't even use, like these tooling stamps. I don't tool leather. I think it's really cool. I just personally don't do it, so I can't give like a solid review on those. I did try them and they seem to work just fine. All right, so the next tool we're gonna use is actually just this little straight edge. Honestly, it's really nice because it's sturdy metal. It's got your inches on one side and then your metric on the other. I've been starting to convert over to metric just because millimeters are so much more precise and there are fewer fractions. And we all like fewer fractions. So I'm just putting my straight edge up to my initial cut line that's indicated on the pattern. So I'm definitely gonna give this ruler a good grade. It's a nice straight edge, stays in place. It's everything you need in a piece of metal made into a straight line. I forgot to cut out the center pieces again, which I do like every single time. The reason why that would be beneficial right now is because this would still be stuck to the leather and I'd be able to use my hole punches and punch out where those already are. But it gives me an opportunity to review another tool. So this is the next tool. It's a scratch awl. This is just used for marking leather when you're doing your patterns if you don't do them this way by taping your pattern to it. You can use it for a lot of different things, so this definitely gets a good grade. I have had the same super simple scratch awl that costs like $3 or $4 for years and years and years and years. So right now I'm just gonna mark out these holes by putting a little dot in the center through the leather. And this one right here is going to be for our snap. So the next tool I'm going to review is the hole punches. These are 2mm, 3mm, and 4mm. For these, I'm going to use the 3. And they actually give you a little punch pad. It's not the softest, so I don't know if it's going to dull your tools over time, but it works for now. Another tool to review, this mallet right here. It's complete trash. It is absolutely worthless. I wanted a tool set with a hammer in it, but there's no weight in it and it just kind of bounces off. You get no force. So what you'll need to do is go to Home Depot or get a nice leather mallet and get something like this, something with a heavy weight inside, rubber. The reason why they're rubber is because when you're doing metal on metal, you tend to get this mushrooming effect on your metal tools and they just won't last as long. A lot of people still do it. It also prevents vibrations in your hands, which can get fatiguing. But we're gonna go ahead and knock out these holes with this hole punch. All right, so the grade on the hole punches is passable for now. Good enough for now. The reason why they're not great is they're actually not polished around here, so they get stuck. And then the cuts just aren't that clean. This isn't that sharp. I imagine the metal isn't super high quality steel, so they will dull over time as well. So these will do for now. They'll last you a little while. There are hole punch sharpeners you can buy. All those are at Rocky Mountain Leather. Pretty much everything I'm going to recommend is at Rocky Mountain Leather. They've been my supplier for a really long time. The hole punch is passable / good enough for now. Now I'm going to bisect these holes with my scratch awl. This is actually a different awl, but it does the same thing. I'll explain that one here in a second. And then I'm going to cut. This is just going to be the little card slot. There we go. All right, that is the hole punch review, the trash mallet review, the scratch awl review. We're getting through it. So before you assemble all of your pieces, you want to finish edges that you're not going to be able to access later, like this top edge here. So I got my edge beveler. This looks like a number 1.5, maybe a 2. It doesn't actually say on it. I can already tell you it is not great. It's gonna be real tough to do any kind of softer leather, oil tanned leather. I really don't like the results. It's so choppy. It just looks really bad. So I don't even want to put this in the passable category. Like, does it cut leather? Sure. But it's just bad, you guys. I mean, I just really have been disappointed with this. I'm trying to do a second pass. Look how terrible that looks. That sucks. Like, that's just no good. So this goes in the trash pile, which really sucks because you need an edge beveler. It's one of the main tools you need in leathercraft. All right, so edge beveler, trash. That really bums me out. I hate it so much, I'm just gonna take it off and then not even bevel the edge just because this looks so terrible. Which is definitely something you can do. You don't have to edge bevel, but that creates a problem. Just get yourself a decent edge beveler. They're really not that expensive. All right, that looks way better. All right, next tool is actually an edge creaser. So I went years and years and years without ever messing around with edge creasing just because it's not really our aesthetic at Open Sea Leather. But they're actually really cool. I have a fancy one now that's like heated. These are supposed to be heated up. I'm not gonna do that right now just because I imagine you guys don't have like a spirit lamp. You can actually use a lighter, but you have to be careful of carbon getting on there and then getting onto your leather. Or you can even use like a butane stove, which is not uncommon. But basically this edge sits just a little bit lower than this edge. So you throw that outside edge up against the leather and then you just apply some down pressure and go back and forth. And you'll see a nice little line there. And it's just a cool way to add a little bit of detail. You'd almost, to the unacquainted, you almost have to point it out to somebody, you know, to get them to notice it, but it does give your project just a little bit more of a luxury aesthetic. So this is very functional. One thing I don't like is it doesn't lock going like in. Like you can lock it for how wide it gets, but there's like a spring action here, which I don't love. Just doesn't feel super stable, but it's definitely passable. So I'm gonna give that the passable grade. Okay, next is an essential, and they can be super, super cheap. This one's super cheap. This is just your wood slicker. So basically you just need to apply some moisture to the edge of the leather and then slick it up. Quick little tip, not the most sanitary thing in the world, but if you just kind of lick it, it works really, really well. Something about the viscosity of your spit just tends to work. I don't know, you get to decide. If you don't want to use your spit, use some water and then a little bit of wax. You can even just use candles wax if it's mainly bees-based wax. It'll work fine for sealing up that edge. But for now, we're just gonna do the little hack. I wonder how many people stopped watching in that very moment. Wood slicker gets an A grade. It's 100% good. It will last you years and years and years. I really like these cheap wood slickers. I like them even more than some of the nice ones because I like that have a little bit of friction because they're not super sanded and finished, which I feel like translates to a little bit better finish. So we're gonna break down this piece of leather just a little bit to show you how good the scissors are. I don't know if these are, I mean, it says stainless steel. They are very sharp out of the box. Cutting through 3-ounce leather, no problem. So these are gonna get a good grade. Again, don't know how long they'll stay sharp, but they are good for now. Okay guys, so the next thing we're going to review is the snaps. I can already tell right away that the quality of the metal is not super high, but you get a bunch of setters and a couple of anvils. If you like buttons and you want to mess around with that, this is a great way to get started. So I'm going to give this a good grade. So we're just going to put a couple of these buttons on. So basically you're going to get like the longest male end and put that through there. And then this little nubby one goes on top of that. Basically the one that has a little bit of a recess in it, this one right here, this is going to be used to set this little nub on top of this male end. And you can use any hard surface. Granite works best, but I'm assuming a lot of you don't have that. We're going to put the rest of this button aside. We're going to put that on at the end actually. I'll show you a little trick to get things to line up better instead of trying to guess how much length of leather you need when you're trying to fold something over. You're going to have to forgive me for always looking at the viewfinder because I have to constantly make sure I'm in focus because the autofocus on this camera is trash. Wish I would have known that before I spent a lot of money on it. But that's the way it goes, so forgive me for looking here instead of here. Okay, thanks. The next thing we're going to do is part of our glue up. We take our little scratch awl and we're just going to mark here where that glue line is supposed to be. We know it's here and here because we're actually only going to put stitches here and here because this top flap is going to open up to fit bills and then fold over and snap. And to put this stitch line in, we're actually going to use this edge groover. An edge groover is not something I use much. I don't like to recess my stitches this way. Basically, there's just a tiny little blade at the end of this here, and then you shove the leather up against this inside of the cylinder, and then you draw back while applying some pressure. And it's just going to put a little mark there. I just don't feel like these get the cleanest lines, and so I'll use a wing divider to mark my stitch lines. So if you're not going to order supplies and tools and all of that from an online leather retailer, you're just going to go the Amazon route and Home Depot, this is the kind of glue that you're going to want. This Weldwood contact cement, you apply it on both sides of the leather, let it cure, and then stick it together. It honestly works so well. I really like it. I like it better than water-based stuff. I've said that before. We're actually going to review another tool right now, and it is this little guy, this little glue spreader. These things are very valuable in the sense that they keep things super clean. I really like how they apply the glue. It's nice and flat. A little tip, get a piece of wood and put your glue edge right up against the edge of the wood. It just prevents you from getting a bunch of glue on like your cutting mat or your table. And then when you do get glue on your block, you can just sand it off. It's super easy. So the review on the glue spreaders is good. They're a little piece of plastic, but they work. You actually get another yellow one as well. That'll be good for bigger projects where you need to spread a lot of glue, like if you're lining something. This has a lot more surface area. A little intermission to review a lot of the tools that I will not use. So let's jump right into that. Number one, this cuticle pusher. It's labeled as a cuticle pusher on the sheet. I have no idea why you would need that for leathercraft. If any of you guys know what you'd use this for, please tell me. On the nail care theme, we've got these nail files. I would use these, but the grit isn't all that significant. They're basically just to sand the leather, the edges of your leather after you've put it together. Kind of just a way for them to add that they have more pieces in there when really these things are pretty valueless. After that, you have a couple speedy stitchers. Speedy stitchers is essentially a way to do a lock stitch by hand, which is more time consuming, more cumbersome than saddle stitching and way less strong. So I don't know why you'd ever want to use these. I started leathercraft with a speedy stitcher. They're just pointless, and I've used this one. It doesn't even work because this corner here is so sharp you can't get the leather back out after you've got it in the hook. I would basically just use this one as an extra scratch awl, but if we're giving these grades, they're trash. All right, what's next? Measuring tape is great for finding out contours and bags and how long straps need to be. So definitely need one of these, so this gets a good grade. You've got these daubers. These are for dyeing leather, for applying burnishing agent to edges. These are very useful. There are other options like the foam, the black foam tip brushes that you've seen me use. Very good as well. goes in the good pile. Metal thimble, I think this is useless. Another edge slicker, here and here. I don't use these very often. I like the other handheld one much better. I find that this edge is too sharp and can actually scuff things up instead of, you know, having that contour. Nippers, these are actually really good right now. The problem with nippers is that they tend to bend and the blades stop touching like this. So if that doesn't happen, then these will continue to be really good, but that happens a lot in my experience. That's why a pair of high quality nippers can be good, but you can also just use scissors. You don't need nippers. They just get a little bit closer to the leather so you can not have so much of a burned end. We've got some repair kit needles. These could be useful at some point. I do like curved needles, but you only have one of each. I make my own curved needles when I do like baseball stitching, and you can just do that by like heating them up and bending them with some pliers. So this is, I don't know. I'm not going to use it, so it's kind of irrelevant. All right, that does it for the extra tools that they gave us. Everything else that we're going to talk about is something that I'll probably use. All right, next step is just to place these pieces together. Keep in mind we are going to trim this. The great thing about contact cement is you can, when it's dry, you just can kind of rub it off of almost any leather and it leaves no trace behind. The next thing we're going to do is trim and then mark our stitch lines. So I'm going to eyeball 5 millimeters right here. We'll measure it after to see how close I get. That'll be fun. All right, there's the piece. I don't know if you can see that. It's pretty darn close. It's pretty sweet. Probably a lot of people out there that are not impressed. This is not our final silhouette for this wallet. This is not good looking at all. I leave this a little bit longer so that when I fold it over, I can measure exactly how long I want it to be and to also mark where that button is going to go, and then I can decide what to do with these corners, whether I want a radius or if I want an angle. Up next, we're going to mark the stitch lines. One thing you can actually use this this edge creaser for is for marking your stitch lines. So I'm going to put in there about 3 to 4 millimeters, and I'm just going to do a light line here for one stitch line, and then another here. So this is a great option if you don't have a wing divider. We're going to talk about these pricking irons. These pricking irons are actually kind of decent. They seem pretty quality metal. Who knows, time will tell. They might get dull. They're not the sharpest out of the box, but they do have nice spacing. A lot of the cheap sets, they're like 2 millimeter spacing, which is just way too many holes. These are 4, and you get a, let's see, I think a 6 tooth, a 4 tooth, a 2 tooth, and a 1 tooth. So we're gonna go through and knock out these holes. It does come with this punch pad. Like I said, it doesn't give much, so I'm going to stack up a little bit of scrap leather because I like to go through the other side a little bit more. You can use cork, you can use pretty much anything. Rocky Mountain Leather has these Japanese cutting mats. You'll see me use them. They're like that translucent blue mat. Those are my favorite. These aren't super polished too, so they do fight you coming back out of the holes. We have our piece punched. Now we are ready for stitching, but I'm going to talk about a couple other tools in the set that we haven't talked about yet that I could use, but probably wouldn't. These are just called stitching wheels. So basically what they're going to do is they're going to mark out stitching holes for you that you can then go back with your awl and, you know, cut in so that you can then stitch. They have both a 4 millimeter and a 2 millimeter. The 2 millimeter leaves much more consistent impressions. This would be good to use like on a watch strap where you want a really high stitches per inch. I wouldn't throw these away. You could use them in the future. I have some. I haven't really used them. I just prefer pricking all the way through my leather with a pricking iron. These are good and useful, and they should last a really long time if it's the type of leather work you're doing. Okay, next we'll talk about these needles. These are kind of weird. I don't love them. You have a whole bunch in here, but some of them aren't even paired up. There's a few Glover's needles and there are a few Saddler's needles. The difference between a Glover's needle and a Saddler's needle is that the Glover's needle is very sharp and it's used to sew through thin leather when you aren't going to use a pricking iron. You're just basically going to shove the needle through without pricking your holes first. I've never used Glover's needles because it's not the type of work that I do. Those might work well, but it's really no way for me to test because I don't have that type of leather. But the Saddler's needles here are extremely dull, which isn't a problem, but they're a little thick as well. Definitely not my preferred. Let me show you real quick my preferred needles. These are the John James. This is the 002. This pairs really well with my 0.6 millimeter thread. Rocky Mountain Leather has a chart where you buy your thread, which needles pair with which threads. These are much thinner and they're a little bit sharper. You can just see how drastically different those are. So these needles aren't very high quality. They'll be fine for your first few projects, but then you want to upgrade to some of these. And these aren't particularly expensive, and you can reuse them over and over and over as long as you do not lose them, which happens a lot. So these are the two that we're going to use. They're the shortest and smallest. I think really those are pretty much your two most useful needles. So I'll just give these as like a passable grade. Same thing with the thread. It's a wax thread. It's not bad. It's a little thick for my liking, but it's also going to get a passing grade. What else did I review that I didn't mention that on? Oh, the pricking irons. The pricking irons, I say, are completely passable. You can use them for a long time until they break, but you may, if you get really into the craft, you'll definitely want a nice set of pricking irons. They're each leather crafter's pride and joy, along with their knife. Okay guys, I'm going to show you how to saddle stitch without a stitching pony. It's just the worst. It's my least favorite thing to do. I didn't do it for very long before I got a stitching pony. I'd actually love to make a how to make a stitching pony video. If that's something that's interesting to you, please put it down in the comments. I will make that. It's really easy. You can use super cheap scrap wood and scrap leather and make it. But I'm not the most patient person, and maybe that's why I don't like stitching without a stitching pony. But I'm going to show you how to do it anyway. You get the thread going through the first hole, you get equal lengths of thread on both sides, and then you always go through the back first, just like that. Grab this needle in your right hand, make your T, pull it through, and then go through the back of the hole, right? You guys remember that from the video, the how to saddle stitch video? And then you loop it over. And it's hard to see what I'm doing because the piece is moving everywhere, but that's your first stitch. First needle in through the back, make your T, through the back of the hole, oops, then make your loop. I'm sure you can already see how annoying this can get. I'm going to finish stitching this in my stitching pony because I have one. Alright guys, there you go. Got it all stitched up. So just looking at the stitching, it's really not that bad for a beginner set. The thread is just too thick for the stitching spacing, so it just looks really cramped. But it works and it's fine. So what we're going to do next is just mark out where this button is going to go. I want it about like that. I don't want it to cover the whole thing, and I want to give my dollar bills plenty of room. So basically I'm just lining everything up and then making an impression, and I'm just going to put my hole right there. Alright, then you're going to want to grab this button, the finish side, and that goes inside of your little anvil here, and then the other female end goes there, and then you get this little pointy one, and that's just basically going to round that one over on the way out, and you have a nice little snap. So we're going to clean up these edges a little bit. Again, the snap set, it's great for a beginner. Not a problem at all. I've seen these sold individually on there. Go ahead and pick one up if you want. Alright guys, here you go. You just fold your money, slide it in, just like I had said before, how you fold it, and snap it closed. No, you're right, I did say it went in, supposed to go in long ways, but you know what, I messed up, and we all learned a good lesson here, that you should check your pattern a few times before you put it on the internet and pretend to be a leather craftsman that everyone should listen to and model their craftsmanship after. But it's fine. If you want to build this, just add a few, I'm teaching about improvisation. That's what it is. You want to just add a little bit of length here and then you'll be fine, okay? So for now, we're just going to fold it and then we put our cards in, and then we fold over on the top and we stretch and it closes. It's not the most elegant package, but the point was for the tools, and so we're going to talk about that right now. Oh, one other thing, these aren't real hundreds. Leather crafters don't make any money. So if that's why you're getting into it, rethink your life, okay? First things first, the cutting mat. Passing grade. Everything that gets a passing or a good grade is gonna go here, okay? Everything that's trash, we're gonna put over to this side. So, first things first, let's go. The groove stitcher, scissors, tape measure, wood slicker, needles, scratch awl, ruler, punch board, the threads, I'll just put one there for now, the glue spreaders, the pricking irons, all of the rivets and hole punches and setters, the nippers, the cuticle pusher, just kidding, the edge creaser. I think that is it for the passing tools. Is this worth $80? You decide. I don't know what to tell you. It doesn't seem like it to me. I would try and find these tools in a smaller set that doesn't come with some of the extras, and then get some of the other things on your own. And we're gonna talk about some of those things. So what is trash, but also what do you need? The mallet is trash, but you need one of these. So make sure you buy a mallet. The edge beveler is trash. Make sure you buy a nice, just a functioning edge beveler. Any edge beveler you get from like Weaver, Rocky Mountain, Tandy even, those are decent and they'll do a good job for a long time. These aren't trash. These next things aren't trash. I'm just not gonna use them. The stitching wheels, the emery boards, tooling set, the thimbles. This is trash, it's the hook awl. The speedy stitcher awl, which can double as a scratch awl, so we'll put that one like. I'm gonna push these confusing ones off to the side for a second. This is what you'll need to do to make anything, is you're gonna need a mallet, an edge beveler, and a good knife, and you're gonna need some glue and some leather. So basically with all of this here, plus some leather, and obviously replacing these two things, you can make a ton of stuff. I hope this answered a lot of your questions surrounding tools, at least for the beginner. I wanna do videos on like, for example, I have a $100 budget, what do I get? Or I have a $200 budget, what do I get? I have a dream budget, I'm a trust fund baby, like what do I get? If you want those videos, let me know a dollar amount, something reasonable. I think when I first went to Tandy Leather, I got like a big hide because I made a bag. I'll put that bag up on the screen right now. I made this bag for my dad. It was the first project I did outside of just like repair stuff. It took forever to do it. Had like 1 or 2 millimeter spacing on all the stitching holes, and it was lined with, I don't know what I was thinking, but he still has it today. So I was thinking that I love my dad. That's what I was thinking, and I wanted to have a really cool bag. I think I spent about $300 on my initial set of tools slash a big piece of leather, a nice piece of leather. So that will give you some idea. And obviously I've upgraded a lot over the years. I am not the craziest gearhead when it comes to leathercraft, like some leather crafters are. I am in a lot of other places in my life, like skiing and snowboarding and golf and all those things, spend a lot of money on gear, but not a ton with leathercraft, because for me, if it works, then I'm gonna keep using it, right? And I like to have something, I essentially use one leather knife for everything. It's my Japanese leather knife right here. This is only my second one. I kind of ruined the edge on the other because I didn't know how to sharpen. But this is what I use for almost everything I cut always. So I just like to find what works and stick with it, but that's just me, you know? And maybe you guys are big gearhead, toolhead guys, girls, whatever, and you wanna just go crazy. That's it for this video. Let me know what you think. I don't know what I'm doing at all with this whole YouTube thing, but it's fun, and I'm just gonna have more personality in my videos because I'll just stop doing it. And maybe I should stop doing it anyways. Let me know down in the description or in the comments. Should I quit YouTube 5 videos in? Yes or no? All right. Till next time.